Fire stuff. Everyone can please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First up, or announcement, is a public hearing to consider local law amending Chapter 195 of the Irvington Code, taxation, to impose a tax on hotels. That's scheduled for Monday, October 21st, 2019, at 7 p.m. at Village Hall. I think this is both a long law and a very simple concept, Mary Ann. I don't know if you want to...
Yeah, you know, I think the most important thing to explain is that while this hotel to say, oh, Irvington doesn't have any hotel moment, it does, hotel is defined a little bit more broadly than, you know, than your Marriott or Ritz-Carlton. It's a building or portion of a building that's regularly used and kept open as such for the lodging of guests, whether or not used, just so people understand. So it can cover B&Bs, it can cover houses that are regularly rented out as Airbnbs. I think that's the main, and then most of the percentage, I think, is the amount that's permitted by the state. There was a state law passed a few years ago, right? Permitting localities to charge, in localities in Greenberg.
Yeah, 2016.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's the percentage there?
3%, I
think
believe.
it's 3%.
Up to 3%, yes.
And so so actually what most of the law is about is, you know, collecting it, who's responsible, or, you know. But the main thing to know is what is being taxed.
Very good. And so I'll make a motion.
No, you think that's enough for the...
Yeah, I think so, and we'll cover it
When we actually have
at
the
the public hearing, yep.
So I'll make a motion to have the public hearing on Monday, October 21st, 2019 at 7 p.m. in Village Hall. If I can have a second. Second. All in favor? Next, we have checks over $25,000. We had two. The first one was for a new fire chief vehicle, which was a total of $39,874.50. And then we had two from a different date. One was for Mercy College, paying our portion of the capital budget for the sidewalks down by Ardsley Hudson train station, which came to $189,722.54. And then lastly, partial payment of the Hudson View Park culvert replacement budget to Landscape Inc. For $54,048.24. Next, the hayride is scheduled for Saturday, October 24th. And Joe, if I'm right...
Yeah, sorry, it's the 19th.
Okay.
That was my mistake. I apologize.
Okay, it's the 19th, and typically early in the night is the hayride, and then after 7 becomes a haunted hayride. Is that right? Give or take.
Yep.
So there's also live music and hot chocolate and donuts. Is that right?
The refreshments served. I think
Or maybe it's
the
hot
name of the
cider.
group is the high school group, Women Empowerment Group. We've worked with them the past 2 years. They'll be serving the refreshments.
Okay.
And then the band's always a really good hayride type band.
Yeah. Country western.
Should be a fun night.
Great.
What time does it actually start?
5 o'clock.
5, okay, thank you.
I'm going to be checking my dates here, Joe. Sunday the 27th, it is a Sunday, so that's good. Sunday the 27th is the Halloween parade, and that starts at Immaculate Conception.
Correct.
It comes down to the Main Street School. And what time is that?
3, we're trying to step off at 3.
Okay. 3 p.m. at Immaculate Conception Church. Next is the Peter Oley Turkey Trot, which is scheduled for Sunday, November 24th, if you want to plan that far out. A great little race. It's about 2.5 miles. It's not, there are a competitive aspect to it, but it's really just more of a fun day. Hence, it's a turkey trot and not a turkey race. It's really fun to come out. If you've always wanted to do it and you haven't, come out and do it. You have to walk at the end.
I just say one thing we're very excited about.
Sure.
For all of you who sat through the hours of the scoring in the past, we are going to a chip system.
Okay.
So the scoring will be almost immediate. The ceremony at the end will probably be reduced by over an hour.
Wow.
We're going
I don't know who
high.
did the scoring in the past, Joe, but an hour for, anyway. And then also looking ahead, Thanksgiving Day dinner delivery will be on Thanksgiving, which is Thursday, November 28th this year. I had two other quick ones. I wanted to thank the FACE Committee, especially Bob Grados, for a unbelievably great Oktoberfest this year. Other than some generator issues, we had just about a perfect day with weather, and I think everyone had a good time. And I also want to congratulate the Irvington Fire Company on their 139th inspection, which was Saturday. I think you're going to talk about it during your report, but one of the highlights, at least for everyone except myself, was that I actually split my pants before I had to speak too. So it was quite a night. But if it had to happen anywhere, it might as well have been at the firehouse. But joke's on me.
Pants on fire.
Next up is correspondence. Did anyone else have any announcements? Mark, do you want to tell people to love them and leave them again?
Yeah, love them and leave them. We have a new batch of signs that sort of, the sub-message is to be climate smart, to mulch your leaves, but also to use battery-powered yard equipment. So there's an example of the sign, and they're available up in Karen's office for anyone that wants one or two. Hopefully we'll get the signs out and get the message out again.
Great. Anybody else?
Joe, do you need volunteers for the Thanksgiving Day delivery?
It's a little early to know. Response is great. We'll send something out
Okay.
pretty soon.
Okay.
Laura will take care of it, but I'll mention it to her to make sure you're on the list.
Okay. No, should people know who should they contact?
Something on Facebook and we'll do email blasts.
He'll call us, don't call. A good problem to have.
Yes.
Next up, correspondence, Division of Criminal Justice Services. Dear Chief Cerrone, thank you for your nomination of Officer Arcangelo F. Liberatore for the State of New York Governor's Police Officer of the Year Award. The Police Officer of the Year Award Selection Committee met last month and selected nominees from the City of Syracuse Police Department as the recipients of the 2018 award. Although Officer Liberatore was not selected, he will be recognized for his actions on April 29, 2018, with Governor's Certificate of Exceptional Valor. I will advise you on when you can expect to receive the certificates. They must mean 2019.
No, I think the
They
certificate's
already
made
have
an
it?
issue, but I think they're hand delivering them, so we're waiting on a date
Okay,
on that.
because I mean, this is dated September 13th, but they
Yeah.
talk about April, so.
Yeah, we'll clear that
The
up.
2018 Police Officer of the Year Award will be presented to the recipients at ceremony scheduled for Monday, September 16th, so I guess that's why it was timely.
Right.
There's going to be a press release where Officer Liberatore will once again be recognized. So that was, of course, for choking out a coyote that was attacking a young girl. Next up is from New York State Turf and Landscape Association. Hello all, we are the leadership of the New York State Turf and Landscape Association, a professional landscaping association representing over 300 landscape contractors, are requesting you reconsider the timing of the blower ban restriction that are imposed. As you can see from the photos enclosed, there's been a definite need to start leaf season as early as September 1st. Leaf cleanup season as early as September 1st. Encourage you to look at the residents in your area to confirm that there is certainly a need for this remedy. Extreme weather conditions dictate the earlier than usual falling of the leaves, and in fairness to our clients, we're committing these cleanups as efficiently and rapidly as possible. Again, we ask you to consider obvious needs. That's Michael Iorio, President, and Joe Tonelli, who's the board chairman. Next up, I have, actually, that are part of North Broadway, like Chet Kerr's and the Strawberry Lane residents. I'm going to wait till we get to the public hearing to include those. So I'm going to skip right ahead to Leola Specs. It was basically questions about the hotel tax. I think we kind of covered it already, or?
I think there's probably an answer that we can get back to her that she asked in her email tonight.
Yeah, so basically, I think the genesis of this, she saw it on the agenda, that we were scheduling a public hearing, and she just had questions She is a person that uses the short-term rentals, so, so you can respond to
We'll
her.
respond, yes.
And we're obviously going to be talking about it on the 21st.
Right.
The next up, I have Allison O'Connor. Community members are now walking the village during the fall leaf blower season and are subjected to the endless noise and air pollution. Once again, I urge you to be forward-thinking with the current leaf blower laws and implement a complete ban during the summer months of June 15th to September 15th. The photo sent to you by the New York State Turf and Landscape Association, so a normal situation at this time of year, a few leaves on the ground. Again, if our landscaping practices become so absurd that we cannot tolerate a few leaves on the ground for the first few days of September, our children should be walking to school onto the bus stop through the leaves, maybe even kicking them, a perfectly normal fall activity. They should not be dodging multiple workers with gas-powered leaf blowers that are kicking up dust so they have to breathe in on a daily basis. That's not normal. I urge you to consider the health and needs of the Irvington community members and families, not the profits of the landscapers. I also encourage you to look at the purpose of NYSTLA at the week following. Purpose 10 is quoted below. Quote, engaging in any lawful activities which will enhance the efficient and economic progress of the industry and apprise the public of its scope and character. Thank you, Allison O'Connor, 56 West Clinton Avenue. We did receive another piece of correspondence on that were not included in the correspondence list. Dear trustees, I'm writing in support of keeping the ban of gas-powered leaf blowers from June 1st to September 14th. In addition, I propose the village trustees to ban gas-powered leaf blowers all year round and allow electric or battery-operated leaf blowers only. The village should also encourage the use of rakes and clippers. Battery-operated lawn care equipment is cleaner and quieter, and in the long term saves money due to eliminating the need to purchase and manage gasoline. Please see my reasoning, and then the highlights are air pollution, noise pollution, environmental risks as well. We will post this letter next month, but we just wanted to include it, and that's from warm regards from Jacenna Sorelli, 11 Grinnell Street in Irvington. Yeah, the rest of it we're going to save for the public hearing. So now we'll open up to public comment. If anyone has comment on anything that's not on the agenda.
Hi. I love battery-powered lawn equipment, and the only thing better than battery-powered lawn equipment is battery-powered vehicles. So I am here. I am here to find out whether and when we're going to get our charging stations so that I can charge my car.
Sure. Well, we're still waiting on Con Edison is our problem. We don't have power at the locations where we're deploying them, so Con Edison has to do a survey of the site and give us
The survey
details.
was done, though, I thought, last spring. No?
No, not by Con Edison. Con Edison has to provide the drop.
Can I do anything to encourage Con Edison to move forward with this?
I'm happy to give you their public relations person, sure.
Yeah, I'd be happy
Sure.
to look into that.
I can send that to
so,
you.
Thank you. Okay. Just keep on it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Anyone else? Public comment?
Good evening, Village Trustees and Mayor Smith. My name is Shaolin Chang. I am in 7th grade, and I founded the MSS Environmental Club a few years ago. I'm here today because I'm deeply concerned about Irvington's use of leaf blowers and other lawn care practices. We have a county law against idling vehicles. You can see the signs outside all of our schools. This law exists to reduce pollution that harms our health and environment. Did you know that the engines used in gas-powered leaf blowers produce far more emissions than the average car? Cars have been engineered to meet stricter and stricter emission standards, but leaf blowers remain as dirty as ever. An emissions test performed by Edmunds showed that a leaf blower with a two-stroke engine produced as much carbon monoxide as 23 Ford Raptor pickup trucks, and that's just one of many pollutants generated by the engines. What this means is that if a crew uses 2 to 3 gas leaf blowers on a yard for an hour, they generate as much carbon monoxide as 46 to 69 pickup trucks idling on the property for the same amount of time. This is 46 to 69 times the amount of carbon monoxide as a pickup truck. This odorless gas and other pollutants emitted by the leaf blowers can take days to dissipate. And that's just the engine emissions. As I mentioned when I spoke here last June, and as Yasina said in her letter, that doesn't even take into account all the particulate matter that leaf blowers kick up, such as dust, mold, animal feces, and pesticides, as well as the noise generated, all of which are also harmful to human health and the health of the animals that share our ecosystem. Our anti-idling law protects our health and environment from excessive emissions from cars. We need the same, if not better, protections from gas leaf blowers. You are elected to represent the village's best interests. I and all the children of this community are relying on you. If anything, the summer ban isn't enough. We should not be looking to reduce the protection from gas leaf blowers. We should be looking to increase it. If we want to truly be responsible and forward-thinking, we should be considering a total ban of gas leaf blowers all year round. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? If not, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Can we post that?
The letter?
Sure. Would it be possible to send me a copy of your letter so we can have it posted?
Perfect. Thank you very much. Minutes of the regular meeting and appointment of personnel and recreation and parks department. Anyone have any questions on these? Corrections on the minutes?
No.
Otherwise, I will make a motion to accept the consent agenda. Do I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Next up, we have the continuation of the Irvington zoning code to create the North Broadway mixed-use district. Mary Ann?
So, I guess maybe it'd be helpful to go through the changes from the last draft. You want me to
Yeah, I
do
think
that
that's probably,
while-
I think that's
Yeah.
probably the best thing to do, see where we are now.
Okay, so, thank you for not saying 30 seconds.
I'll give you a full 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. I'll go through the changes in the order that they're in the draft, if not. There's a bunch of them that relate to changing the use from assisted living facility, which wasn't really very scientific, to senior living facility. And a senior living facility would include independent living, assisted living, and full care living units for persons 62 years of age or older. And then each of those assisted living units, full care living units, and independent living unit are defined. So there's 4 definitions added. Then to the definition of a boutique hotel, the maximum number of rooms was reduced from 100 to 50. Okay, then if anybody's working from the draft, if you go to page 3, and then condition was added to 2 boutique hotels that access and egress to the property must be directly from Broadway. A new use was added, conference centers. The next page, for bed and breakfast, it specifies that they have to be on lots with direct access to Broadway, which is actually our current regulation on bed and breakfast, either Broadway or Main Street. Okay, and then on page 5, there's that's where the yard requirements are, and as that they can't be permitted nearer than 250 feet to the Broadway right-of-way, but this was added. Where, however, the Board of Trustees, in its sole discretion, determines that construction closer to Broadway would serve an important public interest and would be consistent with the 2018 comprehensive plan update, it may waive this 250-foot requirement. And then a similar waiver provision was put in for the height of buildings because of the way it's drafted, within 200, from 250 to 300 feet in, that buildings can't be greater than 2 stories or 25 feet. And the waiver was put in where the Board of Trustees in its sole discretion determines that a 3rd story or 35-foot building or structure within 250 to 300 feet from Broadway would serve an important public interest and would be consistent with the 2018 comprehensive plan update and may waive this limitation. It still has the overall limitation of it can't be higher than 3 stories or 35 feet. Okay, then on that same page, the lot coverage limitation is 30%. But there's also a recognition that anybody developing a property that's opening onto Strawberry, that's accessing by Strawberry Lane, may have to do improvements to Strawberry Lane. So we added that the lot area required for any necessary improvements of Strawberry Lane shall not be subtracted from the net buildable site area for purposes of determining building and lot coverage, so that people aren't penalized for making those changes. Is it when you're computing floor area ratio, that the underground floor area, that the underground parking will be included in that calculation. All the drafts had a bonus of 10% for, well, not a bonus. A bonus for adaptively reusing an existing building, so that if you are reusing the building, you get a waiver from the FAR but not more than 10%. So, and that, before it had 35, now we changed it to 40, so it stayed 10%, because remember, we raised the FAR from 25 to 30%. All right, on the design requirements on the lighting, before, it read all lighting shall be dark sky compliant. We're a little bit more specific here. And said all lighting fixtures shall be full cut off and shall utilize light shields as necessary to reduce light trespassing. Designed to minimum level required for health and safety and shall not exceed 5-foot candles. Timers, motion sensors, and light sensors shall be used to reduce light usage to only the times necessary. All right, then on page 9, there's a couple of changes. One of them is just small, I'm not bothering with just the tweaking to make it, with the just language corrections. But before the section 4712 said considerations for special permits. Well, I changed it to additional requirements because they're actually requirements, not considerations. And a new one was added, and that's that the proposed use 2 will not generate noise or create other disturbance that would be detrimental to nearby residents. Then on traffic impacts, we were, the new draft is more specific. I know I'll do my best. It can result in an unmitigated significant adverse traffic impact at any of the intersections identified by the planning board. It might not just be the immediate intersection. The planning board will say, well, you should study the one, or study the intersection at Sunnyside and Broadway, whatever ones they pick out. And then it defines what would be a significant adverse impact. And that's a degradation in level of service. Level of service is a term, a standard used by traffic engineers, and there's conditions A, B, C, D, E, F. And so that if there's a degradation in level of service from E to E or F, then that would be significant. This language we got from AKRF's traffic person. And I said, well, what about if it went from level B to B? And they did not think that's a significant traffic impact, because up to level D, it's fine. Your traffic is fine up to level D. That these level of services are determined by how long you have to wait for the light to turn. Okay, so if it goes to E or F, then that's significant. And then I said, well, what about if it's already F? Because we do have an intersection that sometimes operates at level F. It's at Sunnyside and Broadway, and it's at Mills. And it would be significant if the increase was greater than 10% in the delay. So if there's right now 180-second delay, if it became 198 seconds, then that would be significant. It goes from 180 to 182. And then the last thing is an increase in the 95th percentile queue length to exceed the provided storage length. And that's for
Marian, question, do we have this information now, or what the current levels are, or would we be getting them?
It can change, but they would have to submit a traffic report, and the traffic report would say what the current is.
Current, okay.
What the current is, what it'll be in 5 years, just without this action, and what it would be with this action, because, so yeah,
Okay.
it's pretty, it's laid out pretty clearly, you know, that there's almost a template that traffic people are following. And then it does provide that the planning board may issue a special permit if mitigation measures are incorporated that reduce the traffic impacts to below the thresholds established above. Now, I know some of this language is a little bit difficult, it's difficult to understand, but traffic engineers understand it. But that's generally what I mean. Okay, and then this is a new provision that no special permit may be issued for use using straw egress unless the applicant makes whatever improvements are necessary to ensure and maintain safe passage over Strawberry Lane. And then the other change is actually to the affordable housing requirement. And under the change, I guess we made about a year ago, was that or maybe not even a year ago, that in assisted living facilities, 5% of all units of assisted living units have to be affordable to households whose income doesn't exceed 80% of the adjusted median income for the county. And that was changed so that in senior living facilities, 5% of all units must be affordable. So when we're saying all units, it would be assisted living units, independent units, and full care living units, 5% of all the units. Those are the changes.
Great. If anyone on the board wants to say anything, I mean, to me, I think we're still listening mode pretty much. We do have 4 pieces of correspondence to cover, but if people are here in person, before we get to the letters, I'd rather allow people to speak that showed up tonight. So if anybody wants to kick off the process, or I can start reading. Sure.
So, my name's Audrey Feinberg. My address is 39 Circle Drive. The driveway entrance to my house is on Strawberry Lane, almost pretty much directly across from, I'm a little downhill to be accurate, to Maxon and where the Maxon building is right now. And on my side of the block, there's several other houses on Strawberry Lane. So I have some questions because I don't know what kind of improvement to Strawberry Lane you're talking about. But let me ask first, so it sounds like the only thing that an entrance has to be moved from Strawberry to Broadway are the 2 uses you mentioned. But there's a whole lot of other uses here, independent living, medical offices, research and design, conference centers, restaurant, places of worship. All of those can be done without moving the entrance to Broadway? Is that accurate right now?
The law doesn't require it. It's possible that, you know, when you get down to the actual study, that there's no way it can be done except that way, but yes, the law.
Well, what,
just you understand.
Yeah, that's my next question is, what kind of improvements to Strawberry are you talking about?
Questions really should be, I just write up what the board.
Sure, so what, so my understanding from that is all those other uses, the entrance doesn't need to be moved. Is that right, first of all? And then what kinds of improvements to Strawberry Lane are we talking about that would allow that to work?
Well, I think that's part of the question. If there's going to be any kind of increase in traffic or something, they would have to say, and it was found that Strawberry Lane could not handle it, they would have to potentially make the improvements to Strawberry Lane that would be able to handle something.
Yeah, I just can't picture what improvements that would be, widening it, flattening it. It's a pretty
It could be any of those
steep
things.
with walls on each side. I understand from the fire department that they don't consider it a safe road.
Well, they might have to move the walls, or that's all dependent on what if it's used for offices like it is now, they might not have to make any changes. If it's going to be something with potentially, additional traffic, that's within the allowable, widen it or flatten it, or at least repave it, or.
Okay, so I guess I want the trustees to understand a couple of things. So first of all, I'm proposing that none of these uses except residential, which is what it's currently zoned for, be allowed without moving the entrance. Second, you have to understand that there are houses directly across the street from the Maxon property. So you might, you're considering this as Broadway corridor, but I would suggest that you need to separate out the Maxon property, which is, as I said, directly across the street from a row of houses. So right now from my bedroom, I see the light on the Maxon property, and if I open my window in the summer, I hear it when the dumpsters come. And Maxon's about the best non-residential use we could have. It's an office that nobody is there on Saturday and Sunday whatsoever. There's a little bump in traffic at 9 o'clock and 5 o'clock. It's an insurance company. People go in, and they leave. So all of these other uses are a huge increase in noise, light, traffic, and everything. The idea that there might be a restaurant there, that there might be a house of worship, that there might be a medical office with people coming and going all day long is really not acceptable in a residential area, and I don't know what the benefit to the town is in allowing those uses. So I think, apart from the road, which is an issue not just for Maxon, but also for Abbott House up at the top of the road, there's a problem with how you're going to use the Maxon. Second, I heard mention when I was here, I think the first hearing on this, about how we wanted the town liked the idea of that green entryway on Broadway. So what you need to understand is the Maxon property is already surrounded by a hedge. So when you drive down Broadway, you don't see their green lawn. So I'm not quite sure, I don't get any benefit from the pushback from Broadway. What I need is a pushback from Strawberry. Closer to Broadway would be beneficial. That's further away from most of the houses. So I think you need to think a little bit about where you're siting a building, if you're going to allow a building. But I got to tell you, think about how you would feel if what got put in right across the street from you was a hotel, a place of worship, a bed and breakfast, an apartment complex, a research facility, a restaurant, any of these things. You're putting this, it's not Broadway, which feels commercial to all of us. This is plunk in the middle of a residential neighborhood.
But I will say that at Abbott House, there's a building from Abbott House that's 3 feet from my property.
Is it?
Yeah.
Also, so you have the same thing with the Abbott House zoning.
Potentially, yep.
The other thing is, remember the Strawberry Lane is not a town road. So in addition to the traffic issues that you're considering, and nobody accepts ownership of it at the moment, as far as I understand, the insurance company was paying their employees in and out, but maintenance, pothole repair, plowing isn't being done. So now we're going to move in somebody with additional use of Strawberry Lane. Now that affects both the Maxon property and Abbott House and everything else. I don't know who's going to take over all those responsibilities. It's my understanding the village isn't willing to take ownership of that road. So in addition to requiring improvements to the road, I think we need to talk about maintenance and repairs of that road as well. Obviously, with more use, it's going to get a lot more wear and tear. I think that's all I have to say.
Brian, I just want to clarify one thing,
Yeah.
just so you understand. I know you were talking about a lot of different uses, but right now, houses of worship are allowed. They're allowed anywhere in a residential district by special permit, just so you know that. Okay? So
Can't
that's
say I
not,
like it.
no, you may not, but that's not a change in this law. That's a use that already exists.
As our friends in Greenberg will tell you, if you try to keep it out, that's one where traffic wouldn't be kept.
And I guess I have a question for the board. Why, what is the benefit to the village to not keeping this residential? There was an exception made to allow the current use, Maxon.
Right, but I think that those exceptions are a patchwork of questionable laws and exceptions and special permits, and we've found with the property owners that when they're trying to sell it, and someone goes back and says there's basically a letter from a board from 1971, it's not nearly as attractive for those pieces of property. And, I think what we found is we'd like to have some commercial use in our town as well. It's a diversification of the tax base. It doesn't have any draw on schools, obviously. And to us to kind of clarify those laws, and I think we've all, I speak for the board here, I think we like the uses that are currently there, so we'd like to allow those for the most part. And then obviously the second part was, what other kind of uses would we potentially like to see there as well, and that's what we've been discussing.
Okay, so you understand that you've gone way beyond the uses that are currently there, which I guess is what I have a problem with. I don't object to Abbott House as a neighbor, I don't object to Maxon as a neighbor, but we're
But
kind of upping it here.
I'm guessing if there was nothing there but pasture land, and Abbott House said, I'm gonna come build a 180,000 square foot facility, I don't think everyone would be like, that's a fantastic idea. So that's why I think also some of it is that there are a lot of controls in place with the special permit and a lot of the things that when someone comes before the board and says this, we have a proposal. So what we want to do, one of the reasons we're doing this is because we had, obviously, we had Brightview come and give us a presentation. And what we wanted to say was, we don't want say a developer to come with their ideas. We'd rather try to figure out on our own time without a developer pushing us what as a community we potentially would want to have on that property. And that's what the discussion is. And to us, when we had the committee that was both the comprehensive planning committee that, started this conversation, I don't know, 2 years ago now. They came back with their recommendations. Almost everything in this law comes from their recommendations. Maybe tweaked, maybe we took some out. But that's kind of where it came from. Because we said we want to get ahead of and this way if someone comes in and says, hey, I want to build an amusement park there, we can say, process of trying to rezone this so you have a sense of what the community wants. So that way also it's easier for the property owners to, because right now people say Irvington doesn't want anything there because, Continuum didn't work or Brightview didn't work. And I don't think that's the case, and that's not what we want to have projected to the outside world either, so.
Yeah, so just understand what you're proposing is way beyond the existing uses. So a quiet office building is very different than a lot of these uses. There's also a list of outside amenities here, which include things like playgrounds, which sound great until it's the, assisted livings, outdoor facilities with a larger number of people than however many houses they could build there, right across the street from you. I also heard some mention of open space, but the Maxon property, I don't think that gives anything useful to the town, not visually, because it's surrounded by a hedge right now, and certainly not for use by the town. It'll be private property and probably closed off. So if anything, it's open, it's a little bit open now because nobody's there on weekends, but once you put in a facility that's going to be used on the weekends, they're not going to let the public in. So I would say I don't see any benefit in going beyond what we have now on that property.
Except, they have had problems renting some of those properties now. So, to me, if you're going to have almost kind of a big piece of property that is, and honestly, high-end homes that they're zoned for aren't selling now either. So to me, if we could have some commercial property that potentially could offset, have a different type of stock in town, I think it's potentially a worthwhile discussion to be having. That's where we're having the discussion.
Yeah, but is high-end the only, how about not high-end homes? Strawberry has a two-family house on it already. It has a bunch of single-family houses.
But look at, if anyone's going to be zoning 2-acre homes,
okay,
they don't build a $700,000 house on a 2-acre home.
Okay.
They're going to be.
But that's not what you're if you want to propose a change to half-acre homes, I'd be a lot more in favor of that than all of these institutional uses.
And then that'll also, another thing we're trying to preserve is that look when you first come into the town. Yes, the Maxon property isn't part of that look, but the other properties are. If we had said, hey, let's build, a 1/10 of an acre homes there, it would be a bunch of homes, and it would definitely change the feel as you enter Irvington and kind of transition into Irvington, which was something else we were trying to preserve.
To me personally, I don't care about that, but if that's a goal, I think again that's another reason why the Maxon property maybe needs to be separated out a little bit from what you're doing for the rest of these.
Well, obviously there's I think there's 6 lots. They're all very different. So
yeah.
One of them is only 3/4. So all these uses are not going to be appropriate for all of the This isn't like, everything isn't just as of right, do whatever you want once we have this law. There's still a special permit process for most of the uses, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, we appreciate your comments. Who's next?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Village Board. Taylor Palmer with the law firm of Cuddy and Cater. There's been some excellent comments tonight, and we do appreciate the board's opportunity to let us continue to speak this evening in connection with the public hearing on this local law. I just wanted to address at least some comments that did come up this evening. As the mayor pointed out, the uses that are being proposed are uses. The evaluation of traffic, visual impacts, other characteristics, all are considered by the planning board and are certainly very well detailed in your draft amended zoning change to this law. So we do, as far as the owners and the applicants, we do really appreciate the considerations that have been made and put into this law, and really in furtherance of the comprehensive plan in order to do so. So I did want to point out that we of course understand that this is an initial process to look at uses and ultimately design guidelines and regulations that could be associated with these properties, but we did just want background. Just for the record, I am joined by the property owners. We're here on behalf of the estate of Stanley Rubenzahl, but we are joined by both Hannah Rubin and David Rubenzahl of 76 North Broadway, again, the Maxon property. I'm also joined by Dave Smith and Susan Jangill, who are our consultants that we had an opportunity to speak with you previously at the work session back in September. As you know, we also appeared on June 19th and August 5th, and then again at the work session on the 11th. Since that time, we had a chance to review, and we do appreciate that the village administrator forwarded us a copy of the draft revised local law that did include a number of excellent changes, as mentioned by Mary Ann earlier tonight. We did provide a correspondence to the board, so again, we wanted just to present briefly, sort of highlight and summarize some of the details included in our supplemental submission. We do appreciate that that especially the Maxon property was heard at the work session and really was reflective in the comments made both by the attorney this evening and the board in considering all of the difficult challenges that are before you. In short, really our comments are really fine-tuning at this point. We're not talking about major modifications. They really are fine-tuning. We realize the length of the letter may not seem to reflect that, but most of it is because it follows a format similar to your revised law. So we did make our comments specific to your sections in that law so that we'd be able to sort of focus it. I am going to have Dave do a quick follow-up to my quick summary and highlights specific to the FAR and the traffic, because I know those are two big considerations that the board has been looking at for all the properties. But I think I can start with the easiest one, one that was mentioned, and again, these are all included in our correspondence. But there is one section, the modification that included senior living facility. We would see that potentially that definition be modified to say a residential facility containing independent assisted living or full care units, or a combination of anything thereof. Right now, as written, it does seem to be, looks like it's trying to have all three together, but we're saying that any individual of those uses constitutes senior living or any combination of the same. Looking at section 3 of your law, and again, I'm just going to take 2 more minutes here, and Dave will flesh out quickly the FAR and traffic, is a discussion regarding additional uses that may be considered. One that was discussed by the board but wasn't included here was potentially a consulate or an embassy, and then lastly was a spa, which was a sort of a furtherance of that discussion about the existing uses proposed for the district. With respect to the boutique hotel and the bed and breakfast establishments, we did express some concern. Sorry, is there? No. Okay, sorry. With respect to the bed and breakfast and the boutique hotel establishments, there was the restriction put on access only onto North Broadway. We have been looking at it. We have been speaking with traffic consultants. Our planner has looked at this and again has tried to really evaluate both comments from the public where there's concerns about breaking up the existing wall, as well as what other opportunities might exist, whether it's widening of Strawberry Lane, as was mentioned tonight. There's the opportunity to move that wall, the left side of the wall, if you're driving up client's property. It's not part of a right-of-way because, again, it's a private roadway. So there is opportunity there for a number of other mechanisms, whether it's a parallel driveway or other access that may allow for a better access to the site, and all things that would be considered both at the planning level and, again, at your board's level in the initial concept review. One last component that I wanted to touch on, just briefly, we do support very much so the board's this board's ability to consider in the interest of the public. We would ask for some clarifications as to the nature of what that might entail for certain waivers, such as the setback from North Broadway or the building height within that setback. We did alternatively offer, and we sort of discussed this at the work session, another municipality has recently used this in creating a similarly narrowly tailored zoning district, what they call their medical-oriented district, and it allows flexibility for the legislative body in considering an application before they go through the site plan and review process. And I just want to, which I thought was particularly spot on here, and instead of necessarily limiting your board's review to be able to modify or flex certain standards or bulk requirements to specific standards, that the board might consider a more general catch-all for any of the bulk standards that are here. And just for the purpose of discussion, it's in your correspondence, but it says strict compliance. It is anticipated that strict compliance with every dimensional standard may not always be practical or necessary to meet purposes of this chapter. In such cases, the town board, in your case the village board, is authorized to modify dimensional standards set forth to the extent necessary and appropriate to accommodate existing limitations, provided all of the following findings are made by the town board in rendering its decision about such modification. So in that section of our letter, we did include certain qualifiers that might be considered when the board does consider such waivers, even if it's limited to those two provisions that were discussed. But this might allow for more flexibility that relates to a lot of the comments or questions that came up today. So then rather than explicitly restricting access to certain uses, these uses being considered as part of the comprehensive plan for these particular properties, it may be more well-suited to encourage the planning board or the reviewing agency to specifically consider first access to Broadway if it is in fact the best or will achieve all of these purposes, the best access out. So that's sort of I realize a complicated connection and dial down of all of how these regulations might be employed or certain flexibilities might be inherent to them, but I am going to ask now Dave briefly to go through just some comments specific to the FAR and how that's calculated. We do appreciate that that has been modified, but we've done a particular survey on other existing assisted living facilities in the area just to sort of understand the contemporary design regulations and requirements that go into these types of uses that can help be more, would make a better use on this site and be more consistent with other contemporary regulations that we've reviewed. So at this time, I'd ask Dave to go through, and then we would ask one final clarification too, depending on how the board feels this evening, if there will be any more work sessions, and certainly we'd welcome the opportunity to review more detailed, of course, our correspondence with the board at that time in a forum where there can be some ping pong. But thank you again for your time this evening.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. For the record, David Smith, Principal of Planning and Development Advisors. Mr. Palmer has provided you with an overview of the letter that was submitted on behalf of Maxon Group. I just quickly want to go through two of the issues that were discussed in the letter. One is the FAR, which is floor area ratio. And while we appreciate that the village has been considering some modifications to the FAR going from 0.25 to 0.3, as part of the prior correspondence submitted to your board, we've noted that if you're looking at some of the contemporary standards for assisted living facilities, they typically require an FAR of greater than 0.3. And so we would ask you to still consider that particular aspect of the proposed legislation, although we understand and would like some clarification that there is an opportunity to move the FAR to 0.4 if you are keeping a locally historic building. And I think, Marianne, there's just some clarification as to whether if you keep the building, you're allowed to modify the FAR to 0.4, or does that include the locally historic building? So that's, you don't have to answer now.
But let's say that, just make it clear, let's say the building only accounted for 5%, well then you only get the bonus of 5%, but if it accounts for 15%, your limit is 10%.
Okay, I think that's some of the clarification that we're looking for. Thank you. And then secondly, was referenced you've added some language with respect to impacts on traffic, and I think that's very helpful because it tries to help and set a standard for evaluating the potential impacts. And even though I'm not a traffic engineer, and though I play one on TV sometimes, we've suggested a couple of revisions. With respect to the level of service and how that's calculated, all we're asking is that add some language that the Transportation Research Board Highway Capacity Manual, their latest edition, be used as a reference point so that the village is constantly using the most up-to-date standard for evaluating traffic impacts. There was an issue about the queuing length, and based on the input that we've had from our traffic consultants, we're adding some additional language that's reflected in the cover letter with respect to turning lanes. And then last, there was the issue of significant unmitigated traffic impacts and the words to improve. And essentially under seeker, you typically are looking to evaluate the existing condition, what the potential, and then the mitigation is to bring that service level back to essentially the no action standard. So that's, I think, part of the seeker standard that's used as part of environmental impact review that we would consider or ask you to consider as part of the evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, or should I get to a couple letters? I don't know who that is. Do I not have to read the letter from your group now?
Hello. There is a letter there from the residents of Strawberry Lane. I'm Walter Montgomery, by the way. And I support that letter, of course, and am appreciative of the fact that apparently there's been some effort to address, to some degree, issues raised in that letter. I would say that we would still hope room for reduction of some of the allowances that are being made in the proposed legislation per the suggestions in the letter. So if we could do more along those lines, that would be terrific. However, the main reason I wanted to speak tonight, first of all, I wear potentially conflicting, but not ultimately conflicting hats here. I'm the new chairman of Abbott House, as well as a resident of Strawberry Lane. And I'm still a member of the famous traffic calming Irvington group, which is somewhat dormant, but we've done a fair amount. We may be reactivated. And all that is relevant because we, Abbott House, residents of Strawberry Lane, the traffic calming group, would like to work with the village on improving safety on Broadway. At the intersection of Strawberry Lane, to be sure, but in general on Broadway. We've spoken with Larry, who's been very patient in listening to us and has been making efforts that are appropriate along these lines. But I think given what we're considering here with this rezoning, we ought to move in a more focused way on issues of safety on Broadway and access to Strawberry Lane. I know that there is a long-range plan being pursued by the state in connection with the new bridge, but that's really long term. Nothing's going to be done about that, certainly in my lifetime, and lifetimes of certain other individuals here. In any event, we need to, I think we need to accelerate the efforts to improve safety on Broadway around Strawberry Lane. And what that might mean, I can't say, because the state is a big X factor in any such effort, as Larry has emphasized. But I think that working with the residents of Strawberry Lane and with Abbott House, which is willing, more than willing, to work with the village, perhaps we can push the state harder to deal with traffic issues, safety issues in general, whether it's crosswalks, stoplights, flashing yellow lights, whatever it might be. Right now, Broadway is a very dangerous place, and not just at Strawberry Lane. So if we can do something to work on those issues with the village, I know that Abbott House is committed to working with the village on this. Certainly residents of Strawberry Lane are, and I would urge that we do that. I would like to add that Abbott House does a fairly good job of maintaining Strawberry Lane with snow removal, for example, pothole replacement. They want to do more. Their funds, of course, are limited. But right now, we basically, as residents of Strawberry Lane, depend on Abbott House for all of that maintenance. They want to be a good citizen, a good neighbor. I think they are. In any event, the main issue is, can we all work together to improve accelerate the efforts to improve safety on Broadway. And that is my speech. Thank you.
Sure. I appreciate the goal. I would say that our one major effort was to put in that crosswalk by the high school after the sixth grader was struck by a car.
Right.
And with our added pressure, it took us almost 5 years to get that accomplished. So fighting with the state, we need everyone to work together, for sure.
We need our representatives and others.
And that was us willing to pay for every penny of that.
Yeah,
To me, I don't think they're going to be very magnanimous about it, but, I would be happy to help with that conversation however we can to make all of Broadway safer, but specifically around Strawberry Lane as well.
But when I was on the board, this was an issue we began to address, albeit tentatively and only very partially. But, and again, Larry's been talking to our group about how to do more of that. I just think it's time with what we're considering tonight to push harder in a more focused way on these efforts. I ask that very respectfully, having sat where you all are sitting. So, thank you.
Thank you. Maybe that's a good segue for me to maybe read the Strawberry Lane letter. The following is a response to the updated North Broadway rezoning proposal dated 17 September 2019. In August, the residents of Strawberry Lane provided feedback to the Board of Trustees on the North Broadway rezoning proposal. We believe our feedback was reasonable and in line with the village comprehensive plan. Our strong preference was maintaining residential zoning as is for the properties along Strawberry Lane, which is being considered for rezoning. However, we're accepting the proposed rezoning to allow for current use and ask the Board of Trustees consider the 4 specific items. Removal of full-service restaurants from the list of proposed uses, limit the allowable scale of senior living or boutique hotels and bed and breakfasts, amend the proposals reference to traffic impacts such that there will be a negligible increase in traffic compared to a not significant increase. And the village takes ownership of Strawberry Lane, recognizes it is currently a private road with no identifiable owner, ensures maintained to acceptable standard. Feedback of the 4 specific changes provided the Board of Trustees, none were appropriately addressed. Removal of full-service restaurants. Restaurants are not a current use of the properties being considered for rezoning. Therefore, we do not believe this is aligned with the village comprehensive plan. We again strongly urge the Board of Trustees to consider having restaurants, urge the Board of Trustees to reconsider having restaurants permitted use. They're concerned about traffic, late night noise, and the week and weekends resulting environmental impact, and any restaurant bring trash and the resulting attraction of more wild animals. They understand that once the property has been rezoned for restaurants, it's essentially impossible to prevent a different and much larger restaurant from taking over down the road. Restaurant failures are high. Number 2 is limit the allowable scale of senior living boutique hotels, bed and breakfast. We're disappointed that for the updated proposal, it would still allow for a senior care facility with the capacity of 150 beds. 4 years ago, the Board of Trustees struck down a proposal from Brightview to construct a 150-bed facility due to its size and scale. Based on our experience with proposed Brightview development, facilities involving large number of people living and working in the property create enormous strain on local area in terms of traffic, noise, light pollution, constant deliveries, ambulance, IVAC visits, etc. What's changed? Amend the proposal reference to traffic impacts since there will be a negligible increase in traffic. Recognize an effort to include guidelines around a quantifiable acceptable increase in traffic on Broadway. We found the language incomprehensible as to what it really means for the residents living at Broadway intersections such as Strawberry Lane and others. The village takes ownership of Strawberry Lane. While we acknowledge the effort was made to include language requiring the applicant to make whatever improvements are necessary to ensure they maintain the safe passage of Strawberry Lane. Given the language is vague, we'd like to suggest revisiting to add any applicant reference Strawberry Lane up to DOT village code, and subsequently the village take ownership. We believe it's the only viable long-term solution. Regardless of ownership of Strawberry Lane, traffic and safety is a major concern. Making a left out of Strawberry Lane is dangerous. Any buildings or businesses that will be added to existing traffic volume major concern to all of us on Strawberry Lane. Additionally, please note discrepancy between the village and Greenberg. Greenberg indicates Strawberry Lane is owned by the village denies. Please clear any confusion of resolving this discrepancy, as none of the new property owners were given accurate information during time of purchase. Summary, given the review of the latest rezoning proposal, we're greatly concerned about the short and long-term impact of subsequent development to our properties, children, and daily life. Mitigate the potential and negative impacts to our Strawberry Lane community. We again strongly urge the Board of Trustees to again take into consideration our feedback. It is signed by five families on Strawberry Lane.
Ryan, if I could just make a point of clarification regarding the letter. The letter states that the Board of Trustees struck down a proposal from Brightview to construct the facility. I wasn't on the board at that time, but I do remember that the board actually voted in favor of doing that, and it was Brightview that did that.
Yeah, because the mayor didn't vote for it.
And I was on the board when the comprehensive plan did the review, and I, restaurants are one of the listed uses of, considered uses in the comprehensive plan. So I'm not sure I agree with the statement that it's not in alignment with the comprehensive plan.
And one other thing I'll add on the Brightview, it wasn't the number of beds so much, it was just the design of it that, well, the reason I voted against it anyway.
Brian, the other thing that's important is that the limit of 150 doesn't mean you can get 150.
Right, it's
In
limited
fact,
to the size.
the last person who was interested in the Maxon property backed off because they couldn't build something big enough to do this. If you actually came down to the numbers, I forget what it was.
I think it was
that was-
40 or 45.
Yeah, maybe since we increased 30, maybe got up to 60, but it's much smaller, so that, just because that's just the maximum that could be built, and there are one very big property there, one huge site that might work.
Somebody else like to speak? Or should I continue to read? There's a short one. I'll mix it up and do a short one this time. This is from my direct next door neighbor, Leo McLaughlin. Dear Mayor Smith and Board of Trustees, I do feel the changes of the NBMUD proposal regarding boutique hotel, to access and egress the property must be directly from Broadway. 3, the number of rooms shall not exceed 50. Will reduce the impact of any new hotel and residence along Strawberry right of way. However, allowing unlimited restaurant development in the properties along Strawberry Lane allows the same problems, noise, light, and traffic pollution on weekday evenings and weekends to adversely impact our residential neighborhood. There is nothing in the NBMUD which would prevent a 200-seat restaurant from opening and disrupting the neighborhood morning, noon, and night. And so I do ask that you reconsider the subject of restaurants along Strawberry Lane and add the same clause, access and egress in the property must be from Broadway to the full-service restaurant selection. Failing that, and at the very least limit we put on the size of a restaurant. The seat limit is too nebulous and subject to later change, so I suggest a square footage limit on the seating area. Roughly speaking, 15 square feet per diner is average, so perhaps a limit of 375 square feet, roughly 25 seats. Thank you for your consideration. Leo McLaughlin.
A letter from Chet Kerr.
No, I have 2 more.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just seeing if anybody else wanted to talk about it.
Okay, sorry.
Actually, Laura, did you want to talk about the water from John Sheehan, or did you want me to read it?
You just read it?
All right. John, give it away. Dear Larry, I had a follow-up question pertaining to multifamily development. It appears that there is a proposed limitation of 15 units for each building. Therefore, assuming one could build 105,000 square feet based on the .30 FAR, an average unit size of 1,700 square feet, that would translate into approximately 60 units. If I am right, you would need 4 separate buildings. In my opinion, as a former municipal planner and current real estate consultant, this would not be compatible with the intent of the new zoning, which I understand is to preserve as much open space as possible. Each separate building would require its own mechanical systems and common amenities, and necessarily result in more paved areas for driveways, etc. The market for apartment use are empty nesters who currently live in Irvington who want to continue to live in a village in a bucolic, non-urban setting. In today's market, they prefer flats instead of units in which they would have stairs. Often there are common amenities inside the building. Many single-family towns are accommodating this design from their own long-term residents in a similar manner. Importantly, the 3-story limitation and other restrictions will maintain the character of the village wants to continue. The senior housing option does not have this limitation. If the village is willing to consider a 105,000 square foot senior facility in one building, it should likewise do the same for multifamily use. Such a building can be designed to integrate visually into the neighborhood. Thanks, John Sheehan. And actually, the last one I had was Chet's, which is kind of long, but I think I've highlighted it enough that I can only read the important parts. First, he's not able to attend, so he sent us the letter. His comments are as follows. Local Law Section 3 adds a new article, X1B, or I guess 11B. Proposed section includes offices. While meaning offices and research and design are allowed as permitted uses. While the meaning of these terms may appear self-evident, they are not defined in the proposed local law, and I do not believe they are defined elsewhere in the existing zoning regulations of the village. Although the term office is used elsewhere in the existing code, it is always referred to in connection with specific uses. I suggest the board consider further defining these terms. Other permitted use under section 2447.8L includes bed and breakfast establishments on lots with direct access to Broadway. This would presumably apply to lots 2, 3, and 4 in the new district and to lot 1 in the new district if the village allows for partial destruction of the stone wall that currently runs along Broadway on the Maxon property. Given both the beauty and the historical importance of this specific wall, I would strongly urge the Board of Trustees to make clear to the Planning Board that it should not authorize any modifications unless absolutely necessary. This language, however, would presumably preclude the owner of Lot 5 from operating a bed and breakfast unless the lot owner is able to negotiate a right-of-way access to Broadway over another lot. Given the existing driveway access to Lot 5 that is on the east Sunnyside Lane, I would suggest that the board consider modifying this provision to begin on lots with direct access to Broadway and/or east Sunnyside Lane that would be used to develop within the future owner of Lot 5. Proposed section 244712, which is entitled Additional Requirements for Special Permits, includes the following provision. No special permit will be issued for new use using Strawberry Lane for access or egress unless the applicant makes whatever improvements are necessary to ensure and maintain safe passage over Strawberry Lane. I believe the Board of Trustees added this provision in light of the fact that there are a number of existing properties and homes, including homes that will be outside of the new North Broadway mixed-use district, that only have access to Broadway by using the existing Strawberry Lane, and the fact that Strawberry Lane is currently a narrow private road that does not qualify for use as a village street. While I agree with the board that this type of provision is absolutely necessary, I would suggest the following modifications to this language. No special permit be issued to new use along Strawberry Lane for access or egress unless the applicant makes whatever improvements that the Board of Trustees determines are necessary to ensure and maintain safe passage over Strawberry Lane for any new or existing use. First, given the concerns raised about the potential impact of these zoning changes to homeowners and their own property along Strawberry Lane, it will be important in the future that the decision of what future improvements, if any, may be necessary to modify Strawberry Lane that are directly elected bodies in the village, the Board of Trustees, rather than the Planning Board. Second, it's important that if improvements are made, any determination to ensure and maintain safe passage over Strawberry Lane take into account not only the proposed new use on property within the North Broadway mixed-use district, but also already existing uses by homeowners along Strawberry Lane, including those homeowners outside the new district. Thank you for consideration. Charles Checker. Those are the only letters I have. If anybody else wants to speak, I know you asked about the process. We are still keeping this open. We will probably have another work session where we can look through new comments, any revisions we need to make on the law. But I actually think we won't be able to have it at the October work session.
Yeah, we still have to work on scheduling that.
So yeah, we have to figure that out. So it'll most likely be in November's work session. So that means we'll have another public hearing on the 21st, I think, is our next meeting.
21st, yes.
So we'll continue the public hearing then. And obviously the public is welcome to send emails, even long letters that I'll read, or come in public and speak here. But we continue to, I think the law is getting better. It's getting closer to making everyone less unhappy and some people more unhappy, which was our goal. We continue to, value your comments. It has really helped us a lot in the process. And we're finally hearing from some property owners, as well as, I think we really appreciate the Strawberry Lane folks coming together and giving us thought. This is the only way we're going to have something kind of this big. It's kind of daunting these are very different pieces of property, and I think that's part of the issue is, each one has its own unique, kind of characteristics, and we're trying to zone it as a group, which is obviously much harder. But I do think we have the special permitting process does help with that somewhat, as do the kind of restrictions, the FAR restrictions and things like that. It limits uses to some of the properties. But we continue to work with this. We continue to welcome your comments, and I guess we'll talk about it again on the 21st.
Just a quick question about Strawberry Lane. So if it were brought up to standard, the DOT standard, would the stone walls have to be moved or destroyed? Is the width of it so reduced that it cannot meet the requirements? We don't know. I'm curious about that. Just
Pretty certain that
my guess is you'd probably have to move the wall over. That's my guess, but that's based on absolutely nothing other than gut feel.
Okay. To me, it's obviously something to consider when we're thinking about the solutions and the unintended consequences and all that.
I think this is what you said, that a possibility of a parallel drive, like parallel to Strawberry Lane on the other side of the wall, so it wouldn't require moving the wall?
So to answer your question, yes, we've looked at a number of proposals and mechanisms, and that's whether you came down further along Strawberry Lane and connected in at a different point. Again, the wall is, if we're talking about walls, the wall's on the Maxon at least the wall on the left side of Strawberry Lane is on the Maxon property. So there is an opportunity to simply move and widen the road by moving the wall, or there are a number of other mechanisms to connect further down Strawberry Lane to have less either adjoining impact to Strawberry Lane users or maybe more functional, because again, the topography is the same makeup on the site and Strawberry Lane. So there's no real change there, but ultimately, that would come out through the planning process, but it would be a mechanism of being able to design something that has either more than one access. It could mean shutting off the existing access to off of Strawberry Lane at I'll call it the more eastern portion is further up the site into the site. So there's a number of other ways that could be conceptually better for residents on Strawberry Lane than what would otherwise be proposed. And at the same time, the last letter that the mayor read, there was concern about modifying the existing walls down on Broadway itself. So there's a lot of things at work and a lot of other mechanisms that good planning can ensure to result in good design. And that's kind of how what we're proposing is hopefully that the board will consider not, again, this property has an existing variance for 80 employees. There's 80 cars that can be coming into the site for the existing variance. So we're trying to function within the site, within the parameters of the proposed law, but also a good function from a traffic and driveway access. So that's one mechanism.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you.
Brian?
Yes.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Hi, my name is Neil Marr. I've been gone all summer, so I haven't been here, and I've tried to jump in and get up to speed by reading the Enterprise, and it's really confusing, and I'm not really sure what's going on. So my question is really basic. Why was this proposed, and what is the goal of the proposal?
Sure.
I just want to get an overview. Sorry.
You probably remember we had Brightview came, and that was on the back of Continuum coming, and different piece of property, but similar type proposals. So we said at the time, it'd be so much better if we could figure out as a community what we want in that area, which is kind of a unique area because it's the only really commercial / development, big large pieces of property that aren't, potentially fully developed like most of the areas. So we said if we could, as a community, come together, and we did it. We started with part of the comprehensive plan as a specific section of the comprehensive plan to propose uses for the North Broadway zoning district. We just called it North Broadway Covered Corridor then, I think. But this way we could say, if a developer came in, and my terrible examples, they said, I want to build an amusement park there. We could say, no, we had a comprehensive plan, they came up with solutions, and then we changed our zoning to show us what the desires of the people who worked the comprehensive plan were. So your amusement park is not on that list. But you can look at the other things that are on the list and know that, don't come in and say, we have zoning for you here to change it to this. We've already changed that zoning. Another piece of it is that the current uses, which I think a lot of people, at least on the comprehensive plan committee, thought that the current uses were pretty good. They kind of like the way that there's, a setback and there's that whole welcoming to Irvington with the green grass and all that kind of stuff. The current uses there are not really by code. They're not by the current zoning code. They're by special permit. They're by, it's variances. So it's when someone goes to sell those properties, it's not as black and white as I think the property owners would like. So if we can kind of change that as well, I think it makes those properties kind of more valuable in some ways. And it's also would potentially allow them to keep using the current uses.
They would change them to try to keep the character of the buildings that are there now, or no?
There are some provisions that you get, extra capacity or extra
Coverage.
If I recall, the recommendation, the comprehensive plan overall recommendation was to rezone that area so it reflects both the uses and the development that's currently there. That was the overall.
But there are a handful of
recommendation of the
historic buildings, and to kind of encompass that, if you reuse those, you get extra coverage. So that's kind of the carrot rather than a stick.
But there's a setback, also a 250-foot setback? Or?
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, except for existing structures.
There's some out of compliance.
I don't think it says that, but they're already there.
Yeah, that little stone house and things.
And then, between the 250 and 300 foot mark, it can only be 2 stories instead of 3 stories.
Quick question. Is it still quixotic to ask, do we know who owns Strawberry Lane yet? I remember sitting up there and asking that question about 5 years ago, and the answer was, we don't know. I've asked the question a few times since then. Abbott House doesn't know. We don't know, right?
I understand the Rabies said that they had done, the Rabies had said that they did extensive research to figure it out, and they couldn't figure it out either.
Yeah. Well, Rabies did.
Title did it, the research 20 years ago and
Who did?
25
Sorry?
years ago,
Title
and
insurance, yeah.
they just got far enough to figure out that we had an easement and didn't ever discover the ownership.
Right, okay. Well, Des Lyons, it's a very incestuous community, as you know. Des Lyons is the attorney for Abbott House, and he's now investigating the question, but perhaps it'll be a waste of our money. I don't know.
Walter, you'll let us know if you find out.
Absolutely.
So safety first, right? So I'm interested, is there a way to make the turn from Strawberry Lane onto Broadway, both right and left turns, safer? And I don't know if you have gotten far enough into the planning to do that, but that would absolutely be a benefit to the residents on Strawberry if any development could improve the safety on the road. And Abbott House has donated some safety improvements to the road. There's a speed bump that has to get removed in the winter, and I don't know who put in the stop sign. Was that Abbott House too? And a stop sign was recently put in because in addition, it's a straightaway, it's a hill, but it's a straightaway, right? So there's a tendency for people going to the top of the hill, especially if there's a little bit of ice, to like turn onto Strawberry and gun it. And that obviously is really dangerous for any residents who are trying to get out of their driveways. Yeah, so that would be helpful if we're gonna have a change on that road, to have improvements of any kind.
It seems like there are a lot of questions just about Strawberry Lane. I have all those same questions.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking, I guess answerable is what is the width of a road required to be accepted by DOT? And what is the cost to the village of taking that over? And can we take
It's
over
not
a
saying
road
that
that
the
doesn't
village
meet the
is
standards?
taking it over.
What?
This doesn't say that the village is taking.
Looking at Walter's letter, and it says,
okay.
we believe this is the only viable long-term solution. That's what I'm referencing, the letter.
The only thing I'll add to that is that almost everyone in that first snowstorm calls me from the private roads and said, that's the only, my children are unsafe getting on their school bus. So I think everyone that doesn't have a village road.
Oh, I recall this as you
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
But I'm just saying,
Snow's coming soon.
apropos to this paragraph and a lot of the issues that have come up are obviously related to Strawberry Lane. So the more we know about Strawberry Lane,
Sure.
the better.
And if I may, I'm not a traffic consultant by any means, but just like Dave plays, what did you play? He plays a traffic consultant, sometimes I do too, on television. But for the purpose of that question, when the planning board and or the lead agency, and that part would have to deal with DOT because it is a state roadway, they will look at a number of things which include site stopping distance, site distance from, again, stone walls, where the width of the driveway is. All of those components are considered typically in a planning, whether it's special permit or otherwise. That's all considered as part of a traffic review, and typically would be part of any of the proposals that you'd be entertaining for these properties would be part of likely a longer review where you'd have a traffic consultant, because in most cases the planning board would retain its own traffic consultants, and these would be a pretty extensive review. But that's certainly a good comment, and one that would likely come out of any discussion, regardless of whether the access was off of Strawberry or otherwise.
But do they need their traffic consultant now? Because you're making the zoning changes now kind of blindly, not really knowing what's required.
But we're saying that you have to bring it up to whatever that safety requirement is to do anything. So
We don't know what that means.
But we can tell you what it means for our code, but there's no context. If someone says, I want to take this over and I'm going to use it as a private residence, and and I'm going to live there by myself, then they probably don't have to make a lot of safety improvements. If they want to use it for something that's going to increase traffic by 10% or whatever it is, then they probably have to make a lot more. So
So as a practical matter, if you're gonna have to hire a traffic consultant anyway, it doesn't make any sense to do it now.
Yeah, and that would be paid for by the applicant.
Rather than us. And, yeah, they also pay for ours that checks
Got
their
it.
work.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest issues without a light there is, unfortunately, visibility from the left. The wall is right, you've got to pull the car out into the lane of traffic practically
Yes.
to see. As nothing in any of this zoning or nothing that any new ownership could do to fix that, that's really an issue that the village has to work with the state DOT about.
Similar to me, making the left out of Riverview is not easy either. It's much actually easier out of Circle Drive to make the left than it is from Riverview, except if you hit the light perfectly. at the high school.
Yeah, there was a mirror up at some point, and I don't know who owned that. Maybe Max owned it, but it was taken down to help you make a turn.
I mean,
Right. You have to stick your nose out into Broadway of the car, which is not really safe. And then if you don't have clearance to make the turn, pull back. And of course, you can't pull back if somebody's pulled up behind you. Yeah.
It's one of my least favorite corners.
Oh, I never. I do it every day to get to the train, right? Pull out of Strawberry Lane, make a left turn to get to the train station.
Actually, I sometimes make the right and go and go down Sunnyside and come out Fargo.
Yeah, right.
Rush hour, you sometimes can't get.
You can't make the left, yeah. Anyway, we'll continue this public hearing in 2 weeks. Thank you all again for continuing to pay attention and provide us your comments. Thank you very much.
So in terms of all these letters and stuff, look, again, Mary Ann's compiling the issues and suggestions?
Yeah, I'm keeping on this.
Okay, good, thank you.
Larry, this one is, I'm thinking we can probably open it. On,
We're open. You bring an umbrella?
it's raining. So I will make a motion to open the public hearing to consider local law amending the fee schedule into the village code with respect to street opening permits and utilities. If I can get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, public hearing is now open. You want to tell us what we're changing, Larry? Or Mary Ann, or whoever is...
Yeah, no, yeah.
Are the rates
So-
going up or down?
Well,
They're different.
They're being calculated differently. The net result is that they are, they're going up. So the calculation of the permit fee is being done differently to better reflect the cost of the excavation and disruption that are caused by Con Edison projects. So the vast majority of projects and permits that they take out are very small excavations. They're either sometimes emergencies or just investigating one small area. So rather than obtaining engineers' estimates and a variety of different ways of coming up with what the value of that excavation is worth, we're doing it on a kind of a sliding scale basis. So the vast majority will be calculated just on a fee schedule basis rather than employing extensive calculations. For the larger projects, and also we're introducing a time frame for those permit fees. So the permit's actually renewable, and the fees would have to be paid again if the excavation's not repaired timely. So that's kind of a second aspect of this that we introduced. And so there's kind of a different, what we tried to reflect with Con Edison is that there's a different impact to the community for larger projects versus smaller projects. So we're still going to get paid what we expect to get paid for the smaller projects, but the larger projects will now reflect better the actual cost of disruption to the village. And obviously you saw what happened on Main Street. There'll be another part of that happening and in Lower Main Street eventually, and obviously work is being done on South Buckout and such. which, by the way, they are already included under this new fee schedule for that. We're catching up with the law. But the work that they did on South Buckout and West Clinton is according to the new fee schedule. So this is to put it in place, and it only applies to utilities. Primarily Con Edison, there's really not many underground excavations for cable or telephone, but they would apply as well.
I mean, it just seems the fee is not that high that if they could take the hit of going for months without closing up a hole. If you know, I mean, it's not like you're charging them any kind of significant portion of their revenue stream.
Right. Again, we looked at comparables. We looked at other communities and what
But
their
I guess
rates
what I'm
are.
getting at is, I understand that, but if they exceed a certain time limit or whatever, should there be a penalty kind of aspect to this, like that it's creating a public nuisance after some point? You know, they dig the hole, they put everything up, they go away for 3 weeks, for another 3
Right.
weeks, and, you know, at some point, it becomes a real headache.
Understood, but, and I believe we do have the ability, even though we rarely have to go to this, we do have the ability to repair it ourselves and take it from a bond that they're posting, which is another provision that is being introduced into this, is that they'll be posting a bond, you know, and they have posted a bond already for any, you know, repairs that don't get repaired timely. Again, that's not something we're going to go on in 60 days, for
No,
example.
I understand, because
But
there's,
clearly, if there's a problem, we'll have a way to address it.
whenever you dig, it's all discovery.
Right, right.
My other question was just, do they have to pre-supply any kind of description or plans before the permit is issued to them?
Yes.
So that we
Greg
get
gets
around
those.
the
Greg,
problem where they, like on South Buckout, where they were going to dig right in through the tree line.
yes,
So we do have foreknowledge of,
yes.
good, okay. Just for our own safety.
Yeah. And by the way, the larger projects, although I agree on the smaller projects, the permit fee is not exactly compelling to do restoration timely, even though, you know, we have a pretty good rapport that way, getting smaller excavations taken care of. The larger ones can carry very large fees. You might have a $20,000 or $30,000 permit fee associated with a large project like South Buckout. So having to renew that every X number of days starts to add up. So there's a significant, I mean, I understand it's a multi-billion-dollar corporation, but still,
It's coming off of someone's budget line.
Yeah, exactly. So there's still some incentive there.
Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions from here? Or I will open it up for comments from the public. Not this one. If there are no further comments, I will make a motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Be it enacted by the Board of Trustees of the Village of Irvington as follows. Section 1, the fee schedule of Section 114.1 of the Village Code is hereby amended by adding the following to the list of fees. 184.8A, street opening permits for public utilities, installation and replacement of utility pole, $100 for the first pole, valid for 90 days, fee must be repaid each 30 days, $50 for each additional pole. Trenching, 0 to 100 linear feet, $400, valid for 60 days. After 60 days, fee must be repaid each 30 days. Trenching, 101 to 300 linear feet, $450, valid for 30 days, fee must be repaid each 30 days. Trenching more than 300 linear feet, $500, valid for 30 days, fee must be repaid each 30 days. Section 2, all ordinances, local laws, and parts thereof inconsistent with this local law are hereby repealed. Section 3, this local law shall take effect immediately upon buying in the office of the New York Secretary of State. I'll make a motion to pass it. Yes, adopt the law. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Can we just fix the margin so that it lines up, so pole gets moved over after 100 and the 500 goes under 450? If we're
Yes.
going to actually put this in the code.
We might have to repost that now. Significant change.
You have to read it again.
Yeah, I'll read it again. I read it indented.
Yeah, read it with the proper jobs and temp stops.
Request to modify Resolution 2018-20 regarding the elimination of parking space at 16 North Astor Street.
Did we say we passed this? Yes, we did.
We did, yes.
Okay, yes, okay.
Good evening. My name is Brandon Stewart, representing Michael Lewis Architects, and Julia Steinmetz, the owner of Jackson Striano LLC, who's also the owner of the property at 16 North Astor. This project is probably fairly familiar to most of the members of the board. It came before the village about 2 years ago with the same owner, with different architect. You may remember from February 2018, the Board of Trustees issued a resolution approving the elimination of one parking space in front of the building to provide access for a number of private spaces within the building, within the first level of the building. The reason we're here is in the wording of the resolution from 2018, it's resolved to be approved provided that the 3 interior parking spaces are constructed as proposed. Previously, on that first floor, it was sort of a proper parking garage with clearances underneath the building and 3 parking spaces below for the future residents of the building. A number of probes were conducted of the existing slab and the existing foundation. It was determined that it was going to be too dramatic of an impact on the site and to the building in question, as well as the neighboring building, which both date to the this is a historic photo from 1857.
I was saying, like a horse, I guess it was.
Yeah.
That's a big dog.
I know. So, under the new proposed plan, we are now showing a driveway in the same location as was previously proposed, which used to be a loading area. So we're restoring that use, but simply providing 2 tandem spots. So one of them technically is a full, as a half spot, and then the rear of the building and all of the foundation and existing stone walls remain untouched under this plan. So we're here because of the wording in the approved resolution that was contingent on us providing the 3 spots here, and now we are providing sort of 1.5. And I'm happy to outline more about what the impacts on the site are and what our feelings are on what this project will do to the site and to the fabric of the North Astor Street in general, if you'd like, or I can answer any questions you might have.
Should we get a little
Well,
bit
the
about the
reason
impact?
this was appealing in the beginning was because we were giving up a street parking space to get 3.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're giving up a street parking space to essentially get 1 and maybe a half that are designated for residents of the building.
Correct. Well, the 3 that are provided, or that are private spaces for residents of the building, they were not public
No, I
spaces.
understand, but we were giving up 1 public for
Correct.
3
For
that were
3
dedicated
private.
to residents of your building. And now
Correct.
it's pretty much, we give up a public spot for a spot dedicated to your building.
Correct. Correct.
Well, and it's still 2 spots, it's just.
Well, that's 1.5, which is,
Yeah.
so somebody has to be.
Not legally, but
It's- so essentially.
Legally, practically, you should be aware that if it's tandem,
Uh-huh.
and I think you're representing it fairly. But it is, on paper, it's 2 spaces, but think about how that actually lines up.
So-
How it works out correctly.
I should mention the owner of the building, Julia Steinmetz. The plan is for her to occupy the 3rd floor. That will be her private residence, and then there will be one other small 1-bedroom residential unit on the 2nd floor, and the rest of the building will be dedicated to commercial spaces. So essentially, these 2 spaces belong to Julia Steinmetz, the owner. So she can potentially park 2 cars. It's not meant for her to park there and then her neighbor or one of the commercial tenants to have to play a game to get the cars out. So that's kind of where we're at.
The lost, this, on the front of the street. So where were the lost spaces going to be, and now what is the situation?
Okay, so
I'm sorry, I didn't quite follow the,
Sure.
it was
So
going to be,
right here's this is the existing streetscape. The sidewalk is discontinuous. And there's an existing curb cut there that provided access
Right,
to when it
that's the
was
curb
for vehicles. Is along the front of the building. And you can see the one that we're proposing to remove, part of the driveway is actually already not used for parking.
Right.
It's really just this sliver that ends up killing that one spot that we need to provide access. So that's the spot that's in question,
in
and
question in that,
to be removed.
to-
That was previously
right, it was previously a
approved,
spot,
and that,
and you want to still remove that spot
correct, yes.
and make it the entrance to these two spots.
Correct. And one thing perhaps to consider, currently the building is 100% commercial. It so happens that there's only one tenant, which is Loretta's main, the hair salon. But a few years back, it was filled with various tenants, and potentially without us doing any proposed work to the building, would remain completely commercial, which obviously has higher parking requirements. So we feel that converting a large portion of the building to a residential use, namely the entire third floor being dedicated to one sole owner, and then the other apartment, the hope is that that brings the parking load down slightly. The other thing we're doing is in the rear of the building, you're probably familiar that the back of the building gets fairly buried in the earth fairly quickly, so it's very difficult to get light and air down into those lower levels. So part of what we're proposing to do is to sink, we're removing the existing roof of the second floor back here and sinking it down a small amount in this area and a significant amount in this area, so this becomes only a one-story building. So in addition to converting some of the commercial space to residential, we're also just eliminating general bulk of the building and general square footage that otherwise might be rentable and create a parking load. So we feel, considering the probes that were done, the impact, it was determined that the 3-car parking garage would create, that this will have a lighter touch on the site, and the other improvements we're making, we hope will bring the parking rows down from where they are.
Well, I express my concern. I don't know what everybody else thinks.
I'm trying to remember when you were here in our earlier discussion, and I remember thinking that it would be quite an improvement to the area of the kinds of things that you were planning to do. I certainly know that spot that has the kind of chipped curb, and
Right.
it's not, yes, you could pull a car in there, I guess, now and park it, but I don't even,
Yeah.
I think I with this proposal.
Yeah.
Based on what the positives that is going on in
We've-
one spot.
We've seen too, the permit was pulled to do interior demolition, and it's currently wrapped up. But we've, even just from being there on site, I can see how trafficked it is, and people coming to this sidewalk and having to cross the asphalt and get to the other sidewalk. So I think part of our general plan here is also to create some continuity there to ease that transition. And there have been traffic devices that have been proposed by the recommendation of Han Engineering and the Planning Board, so that that becomes a safer place for both pedestrians and vehicles. So we hope that that also contributes to the betterment of the area.
You might want, I mean, not that that was the issue that you raised, but there was some concern about the safety of people coming out of their driveway. And I think the recommendation would, from the planning board, was that there be some kind of a beeper, you know, when signaling when the car is backing out, so that pedestrians would hear it. So,
Correct.
So, in terms of the safety, the planning board was on that, and you guys were receptive.
Yes.
So the planning board is held up in deciding about the rest of this plan based on this spot.
Well, I mean, you're not held up, I mean, but this is a parallel, this is going on parallel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah,
That's
this
all.
is
But yeah, they
Design.
can't decide.
Yes.
Okay.
would
Where
not
there were
be
3 spots.
Mhm.
place anymore,
Cars
right here.
that were pulling
That's what we
into
lose,
that driveway
that
for those
spot.
3 spots. Were they backing out, or were they
Actually makes it
able to
easier
pull
to
out
walk
front first?
from here.
The planning board
Here,
required
there's
some
no car there.
diagrams for turning radiuses. I don't think it allowed for a complete U-turn, but they did provide, the previous architect did provide sort of a T-shaped diagram that showed how cars would maneuver in there.
So in the original plan and the original approval, the thought process was that cars would be able to pull front face out of that spot?
Yes, ultimately.
And now they have to back out of the spot?
Yes, now it's just a straight driveway, so it's...
One car.
And you can see the property to the north juts out further than ours with a retaining wall that's about 4 or 5 feet tall. So that, luckily, that does provide some shelter for the car to see at least in one direction at a time and then look in the other direction as they back out. And to answer the question about the planning board, we made our second appearance at the planning board last week, and I wasn't personally there, but my understanding is that we were allowed to appear before you and proceed to ARB to come back later at the end to receive our final approval. Is that correct?
Yeah, assuming everything else was fine.
Right.
No, I'm a little concerned about the difference in safety between pulling out and backing out onto Astor Street.
Mhm.
And I also recognize Janice's comment about originally you were taking away a spot for 3,
Mhm.
and now taking away a spot so the owner can have 2 spots.
Yeah, all the other spots along North Astor here are obviously that require you to back out onto North Astor. And I think the way this would work, it would be similar to the parking spot that's there, where you would have to back out in reverse. So we're hoping that the traffic devices that are proposed, including the siren / flashing light that we've spoken to the planning board about, in addition to some signage that's to be placed on either side that alerts pedestrians that it's an active driveway, along with painting actually on the asphalt a buffer zone that signals that it's not for pedestrians. Our hope is that all of those in conjunction together will provide the proper level of safety there. I think also the fact that it is just the parking for the owner of the building means that perhaps the sidewalk will be traversed significantly less often than it would with the 3-car plan, just from the sheer numbers, and also there won't be any of these commercial tenants that are using the spots within the building during the day.
So right now, people have been backing out of all those spots for years, right?
Mm.
There are all those angled spots, and in that area, it's, it's.
Well, there's a
everybody-
difference, though. If you're backing out
There's-
of an angled spot, people who are coming down the road can see you backing
Right.
out. If you're backing out of a driveway,
Less visibility for sure.
Yes,
it's
you're-
much less
yeah,
visibility.
Mhm.
Um,
Correct.
You're halfway out.
You didn't join us for the 75 hearings we had on parking in
Yeah.
downtown.
Yeah.
So I remain very concerned about something that's essentially giving up a public spot for a private spot.
Mhm.
I'm not sure, it obviously is an advantage to the owner of the building who has a guaranteed parking spot.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what the village gets from it, honestly.
Mhm.
You've obviously done a tremendous amount of work. You obviously had, a plan for the three spots. It didn't work for complicated reasons.
Mhm.
This is clearly a project that's very much work has gone into, and very much thought has gone into, but I'm a little stuck here. I don't know, Larry has spoken, I don't know how the rest of it, what do you think?
If I could address one thing there, I think if the parking were to be maintained in its current state, with a new tenant in the building that's there, not 24/7, but that's there on a daily basis, around the clock. I think the spot that we're proposing to eliminate would likely be filled by her family or her guests, as well as by other tenants of the building. So you're right, in moving it indoors behind a closed garage door, it does secure it and it makes it her own spot that's not flexible for use by the public. But I think from a day-to-day perspective, it's likely that her requirements for parking would impact what's there anyway as well.
So you're removing 2 cars that would potentially be on the street.
Correct.
2 additional cars would be on the street, and now they're not on the street.
Right.
So there's 2 as opposed, and you give up 1 spot, the 2 cars are gone. So it seems like still a net positive for the public.
And I also think when you think about cars that are coming to use this part of the village for commercial reasons, they're there only during the day, whereas a resident usually looking for parking at night. So I think the fact that we're converting the building from strictly commercial to a mixed use probably provides for some sharing of those spots during different times of the day and night that might be also a benefit. We've seen across the street, obviously, with the Bazaar reserved parking spots. I'm not sure if it's allowed for residents of the neighborhood to park there overnight.
I don't think so. I don't think there's any overnight parking there.
Mm-hmm. We weren't able to find anything for these either. We couldn't see any restrictions on if
Yeah, I think
parking is prohibited.
Parking is
during the night.
allowed overnight.
It's only allowed overnight if it's allowed by sign, so it's the opposite.
I see.
I used to live at 22 North Astor, and I found that out.
Oh, yeah.
Parking there, I looked for the sign, there wasn't any, but it's actually the opposite. You need to have a sign that says it's okay to park
Oh,
overnight.
I see.
So, should we just take a quick straw poll on this? I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with it.
This is-
I still say, I'm okay with it.
So it's not a
I'm
straw
sorry,
poll, it's a
Mark, what
vote.
did you say?
Well, we're down, we'll take a vote.
I said
Yeah.
I thought it was a net benefit.
It's a net benefit overall?
Yeah, it's unfortunate we can't get 3 cars off the street.
Yeah, of
Getting
course.
2 cars off is better than not.
I can be persuaded here, I just don't want to make it like, oh, sure.
Oh, definitely.
Not 3, but 2 and maybe 1.5 is fine.
Parking,
Because you're really
it's-
asking for a dedicated parking space. for your
Right,
client.
and it's understood that parking is one of the hardest things to control and
So what I'll do
regulate.
is I'll read the resolution, then we can vote. Whereas the Board of Trustees previously adopted Resolution 2018-20, allowing the removal of 1 on-street parking space adjacent to 16 North Astor Street, provided that the interior parking spaces were constructed. And whereas the owner of 16 North Astor Street has modified the plans due to the challenging site conditions to provide 2 interior parking spaces, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees approves the modification of Resolution 2018-20, now requiring the construction of 2 interior parking spaces inside 16 North Astor Street, leaving all other terms of that resolution unchanged. I'll make the motion if I get a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right.
Great.
Now, I mean, this is just, go back to the interior for just a second. I just had this thought that was, what was it that prevented the drive into the rear of the building structurally?
The
I mean, you
This
have
doesn't
a
show-
commercial space there
Yeah.
that could be internal parking.
So this doesn't really show very well in plan.
Yeah.
But the reason for this angle here is the slab is even back to this point here, and along the line that I'm drawing with my finger, this portion of the floor steps up 30 inches, probably because of bedrock that was encountered when they were pouring the slab. That's our best guess.
So you mean to the left of that Y
yeah.
shape?
All of this portion here is raised 30 inches, so that was going to have to be chipped away at and brought down to the same level of the rest of the driveway, which would require underpinning of the foundation along the rear. I wish I brought that plan with me that showed the 3 spots, but it really did take every inch of this to make it feasible for 3 cars to get in there and park. And so it really did require going right up against the foundation almost on all 3 sides with some significant
And
underpinning.
it almost meets the building next door, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
So it would
You're digging into the spread area of the foundation.
And concerns have been raised, in fact, by that neighbor to the north about this. Yeah,
right.
Now it's all parking.
All parking lot.
Now it's all parking. We get rid of the rubble.
That might be nice, yeah.
Okay, historic building.
All right, well, thank you very
Okay,
much.
thanks.
Thank you.
Next is approval of a shared service intermunicipal agreement with the Village of Tarrytown for the New York State DEC grant for a recycling app.
Don't we already have the app?
We do.
We have
yeah.
that app.
We just
Good.
We're getting it for
So
free.
we got
right?
it for free.
We got it for free, yes. So the plan is, Village of Tarrytown had graciously volunteered to be the lead agency, so the municipalities that have signed on to use this recycling app, there's a cost to that, which is about $1,500 a year for our village, could be different for other villages. That amount is being submitted to New York State for a reimbursement of 50% of that. But the way it all has to flow is that we have to actually pay Tarrytown, pay the vendor.
Whoa.
Tarrytown will then submit for the grant,
Reimburse us.
hopefully get reimbursed, and then they'll pay it back out to us. So but it requires 50%, but it requires
Government efficiency at its
an
best.
intermunicipal agreement,
Get
right? So that's really it.
The
And
governor, right?
yeah,
So,
I like that app. I think it's great.
yeah, there's a couple of improvements we need to make, but it's
the first thing I
pretty
looked
good.
up, and it didn't help me. I looked up how to dispose of LED bulbs,
okay.
and it wasn't listed.
Okay, we can request for the
They're still supposed to be in their useful life, that's why. Get another 18 years left on those bad ones.
Okay, all right.
I mentioned it to Greg, but I don't know who's keeping a master list.
That's fine. I'll
But
take
this
care of it.
prevents us from having to do with the mailing, correct?
Yes, that's the plan. So the plan is actually to friendly postcard this year instead of
Go to the app.
a full mailing, to direct people to the app. And also, we'll have a little instruction page and instructions that if anyone wants a printed calendar, I don't mean a full glossy one, because we're not going to print those.
But they can print a PDF.
Yeah, and we can print, but for someone who really just wants something mailed to them, we can take their address, type it in, and print out their own personal schedule.
Personal, that just means by neighborhood, right? I mean, what do you mean by personal schedule?
Yeah, by route.
North or south?
By route.
But it
There's
will
lots
have
of
your
different
address
schedules.
or
Main
your
Street has
address.
its own schedule, but it's based on your address and the dates of collection at your address.
Larry will actually call them.
I don't mean times,
That
just
they
dates.
have, yes.
I mean, I
When you
can't.
get-
Tomorrow's recycling day.
When you get too
Personalized
many parking
schedule.
tickets, you don't get your
Well,
garbage picked up.
It's pretty personal. It doesn't have all the other colors on there. It's just got your days listed. That's pretty
Keep
personal.
your
Dear resident.
Yeah, right. Dear Mark, this is your schedule.
And so then people like JPDF can have extra room to talk about stuff that they need to put into the recycling side? I mean, there's extra text area, I take it.
On the calendar?
Well,
Which, I'm sorry.
There's, on the calendar, there's a front and a back.
Yeah, it's a very generic
But you-
type calendar.
So where does all that information?
You type in,
There's
you
a
ask
link.
it a question.
There's, I believe there's a link to our rules and regulations. And
That's
there-
what I'm asking.
Right,
There's a
yes.
separate, yeah.
Yeah, all the
I
stuff
don't
that's in the
remember
back.
playing with it, so.
Right.
I thought when you, I played with it, I thought when you put in like, what do I do with a light bulb? I think it just answers that part or shows you
If it's in
that
there.
part.
Right.
You don't have to read the whole,
Yes,
thing.
if it's in there, if it's in the
Yeah.
database, but the database can be updated.
yeah. It's cool. Okay, let's do it.
Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees authorize the village administrator to execute a shared service intermunicipal agreement with the Village of Tarrytown for a multi-municipal grant to the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation for a shared recycling app for the period January 1 through December 31 to be renewed from year to year. I'll make a motion and have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the snow and ice agreement with the Department of Transportation. Here comes the snow.
Let's see. So
Any changes?
Well, I think they're changing the term of the agreement, that it's covering a 5-year period instead of 3.
No, instead of 2.
Instead of 2, I'm sorry. Although it says 3 in their cover letter. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry. In any case, they're changing the length of the agreement, but what really happened, they pay us a lump sum amount to plow Broadway. It's based upon the lane miles, it's based upon the expenditures that they incur. There's a formula of, number of responses that they have during a winter. They pay us a lump sum amount, a base amount, and then that amount gets adjusted after the winter is over, depending on the actual response. So that's been that way. You've approved those, whether you remember or not. You approve these amendments every year, which amends the original base amount. So this provides for the base amount. The amendments will come each year. But it's a reimbursement for plowing Broadway. So
I don't remember it being filled out in pencil before, or whatever, by hand rather than...
I don't know. We take it however they give it to us.
Their check's still clear. So that's
The check clears, yes.
Yeah.
And that's
They
electronic.
usually send us extra checks.
Yeah.
It is funny though, to see the handwritten, especially the 9. It looks like a European guy wrote it to me.
But it was a significant overage last year, right? I mean, it's much higher than what they thought it was going to be.
It feels like it is every year to me.
It depends, yeah, it really just depends on and they base it on the number of responses, I believe, that they have to winter events. So it's not just how many times we go out, it's how many times the state DOT goes out. Anyway.
Whereas the Village of Irvington and the New York State Department of Transportation was to providing for the village's removal of snow and ice from North and South Broadway. Now therefore be it resolved to approve the 2019-2024 snow and ice agreement between the Village of Irvington and the New York State Department of Transportation, and to authorize the Superintendent of Public Works to execute said agreement. I'll make a motion. I have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Modification to contract 2019-06 with Pascal Drulek for farmers market management services. Looks like we've increased the pay a little bit, Larry.
Yeah, so the Farmers Market Committee attached to this, there's an appeal asking for the board's consideration to increase Pascal, the market manager's contract, from $950 a month, per market, sorry, $950 per market to $1,050, and that would be effective September 1st, is what they've asked. They also indicated that their market manager would be taking on as part of this. So the request looked rather straightforward and made sense. The rate, frankly, hasn't increased in a number of years. I didn't research it to go back, but it's more than 1 or 2 years that it's been this rate. And it seemed to make sense to take a little bit of the volunteer work and shift it to the paid employee.
I would agree. I think that Susie Farmer is doing a very good job of trying to expand delegation on the committee itself to get more people involved and to sort of split some of the roles. But the social media Facebook role has become a huge burden for the volunteers. This is something that Pascal's going to take on. And I comment that there is money in the budget to be able to cover that increase.
Yeah, it's healthy.
I'm glad to hear your report on this, Larry. That's good news, that all that's happening, and the bottom line is good, and the volunteers are stepping up, and it makes sense to me.
The only question I had was, it says it's a monthly fee. Isn't it actually a per market fee?
It is a per market fee.
Per month. Good. Don't mind here.
Yeah, we'll change that.
I thought we were really trying to pull one by right there.
Yeah, right.
It's actually much less for paying. Yeah.
Got it.
An annual fee. I think the success of the market has been phenomenal, and that's all about who you get to come, and I think it's just been growing every year and every week, so it's been great.
We also talked about the idea of having the committee come in over probably the winter when it's a little bit not as busy, to give you an update
Yeah.
firsthand, like we used to do.
Yes.
To bring
years
us samples.
Bring a sample. We never got samples.
We should never pay no more.
We.
Glad you weren't here.
Oh, that was it. I think that's a good idea to bring them back again as a, recognize some of those volunteers who are doing what they're doing would be great.
Whereas the Board of Trustees previously approved a contract with Pascal A. Drulek for farmers market management services through 2019, and whereas the Farmers Market Committee has recommended additional responsibilities to the farmers market manager in exchange for an additional month market fee effective September 1st, 2019, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees approves a modification to contract 2019-06 to increase the per market fee to $1,050 effective September 1st, 2019, leaving all other terms and conditions of the original contract unchanged, and further resolved to authorize the village administrator to execute said modified contract. I'll make a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And last is approval of the fire company fundraising letter. I assume we crossed out, sir, this they're updating them to the current. Exact same letter with the annual senior luncheon.
Yeah.
Updating, it's 139 years, and I don't know how many calls, but.
Yes, that's basically it. And they wanted to try to hit this meeting so that they can get this out, I think, by the end of the month is what they're looking to do, so.
It's the same letter as last year, so,
Yeah.
it's hard to change it too much now, but.
What's good about this is that it explains what the
Company is.
contributions go to.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, there's no, it's very transparent.
It's not too long, it's good.
Resolved to approve the fundraising letter from the Irvington Fire Company, Inc. I'll make a motion. I'll get a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Reports of board trustees, standing committees and officers. Trustee liaison reports. Mark, start with you.
I don't have any right now.
Doc?
Yeah, unfortunately, I have.
Recreation Department. You should make Joe stay, otherwise you'll only do this.
All right. Oktoberfest was a great success. Thanks to everyone who made this the best Oktoberfest to date. Special thanks to Bob Grados and the FACE Committee for their efforts. Recreation Parks Advisory Committee will hold their regular monthly meeting Wednesday night, October 16th at 7 p.m. in the Senior Center. Irvington Woods Committee will hold their monthly meeting this Thursday, October 17th, 7 p.m. at the O'Hara Nature Center. Community Advisory Board will hold their October meeting tomorrow morning, October 8th, 8 a.m. in the Senior Citizens Building. IS Executive Board meets October 15th, 8 a.m. in the Senior Center. The Holiday Happening Committee will meet on Monday, October 21st, 9:30 a.m. in the Tiffany Room. Youth Indoor Soccer Clinic, Basketball Wrestling registration will start October 16th at 9 a.m. The Rec Department office will be open until 7 p.m. on the 16th. There are a few limited spots available in toddler programs, including Stepping Stones, Kitty Corner, Music with Mark, and Adventures in Architecture. Registration's going on for 4th and 5th grade at Friday night open gym. Save these dates: the Hayride, Saturday, October 19th, Halloween Parade, Sunday, October 27th, Senior Citizen O'Hara Foundation Thanksgiving Lunch, Tuesday, November 25th, Thanksgiving Day Delivery, Thursday, November 28th, Turkey Trot, Sunday, November 24th, Holiday Happening and Tree Lighting, Saturday, December 7th. Teenscape registration is now open for their Boundless Adventure 6th to 8th graders for Tuesday, November 5th. Please pick up your dog bags with them, with the dogs, when you walk in.
The dogs?
Aqueduct or at Halsey Pond, dogs must be on leash. Special thanks to the Beautification Committee for planting on Main Street today. I did see it, it looks great. And the Ball Fields Backstop Replacement Capital Project started today. Park users are asked to please stay away from that area during the work, which should take about a week. Thanks. And there's the Village of Irvington Memorial Day Parade Committee.
Oh, yes, we were going to announce that tonight.
Yes, do you want to name the
I'm sorry,
members?
yeah.
Well, I mean, I think we haven't get the name of them tonight, but just to kind of let people know that, you know, if you remember last year, we canceled the parade due to lack of turnout. So there's a group of people that kind of raised their hand and said we'd be happy to help. So we said, great, we're happy to have you help. So it includes people that are related to the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, schools.
They contacted me.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Okay, give me that name, I don't know that name, but we have about, I don't know, a dozen people on the committee or
Something like that.
The
At least identified, anyway, yeah.
So,
Send me that list, I don't think it, whatever, but
Sure.
somebody forward it to me and I'll see if I can browse
so
it.
we just want to let you guys, let people know that that's happened. We've moved forward. We said we were going to do it shortly after Memorial Day. Figured there wasn't any great rush. We waited the summer to be over, and now we're kind of ramping it up so we can hopefully get a turnout again.
All right, do you want me to do my highway department?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, highway department, there's been milling and paving on Cedar Lawn Road and Dunham Place. And everybody has seen the watering the trees and the flower boxes along Main Street. This is all being done by the DPW. They did a lot of assisting other departments. They assisted the police department, they assisted the parks department, they assisted the water department, all with different projects, cleaned and painted the Station Road tunnel walkways and crosswalks, and painted other lines, and doing their backhaul and filling potholes. And Jim Englishby's water department, as always, they are reading water meters, doing fall maintenance, working on the hydrant maintenance list. There's been flushing and finished their flushing in the high and low service areas. Installed 2 new flow meter and chart recorders at Mountain Road Chemical Feed Building. Fixed broken curb box in the sidewalks in front of 9 Grinnell. Water main break South Astor Street repaired. New fire hydrant and 6-inch hydrant on South Astor. Replaced broken fire hydrant on the corner of Meadowbrook and Fargo. Riverview Road booster station is close to completion. Chlorination and testing is all that is left. Sewer test is complete for the Hudson Road project. They have installed 13 pieces of culvert with 17 more to be installed. That is such a big project. The service for 94 East Sunnyside has been reinstalled. There was a couple of other things, but they've been busy, and that's my report.
Yes.
Is it?
Yep, that's it.
So the major thing which the mayor already alluded to is the fire department inspection. The annual inspection was this past Saturday night. This happens every year, but it is very impressive every year, and very glad to see that not only did Mayor Smith speak, but our state senator Andrew Stewart Cousins was there, State Assemblyman Tom Abenanti, County Legislator Mary Jane Jimsky, and Town Supervisor Paul Feiner, all of whom expressed the recognition and appreciation of everyone for the incredible service that our volunteer firefighters do. This was Chief David Dowd's first year as chief, so this was his first inspection, and he was very pleased with how it went. But definitely, as we alluded to before, the big news of the night was that the mayor ripped his pants. And Father Ashman was considering offering a prayer that nobody would notice. I realized that would probably make it a bit more publicly. But it was a wonderfully, very much a wonderfully.
Except for my pants.
Actually, it provided a lot of comic relief. The library are still pleased about the record year for the summer reading program that they have for children and young adults, including a number of kids under the age of 4 who aren't reading yet but are getting prepared to. I just thought this was worth noting. The top reader among the children read for a total of 134.5 hours over the course of the summer. That's pretty amazing. Good for that kid and for all of the kids. Finally,
they now call him Doctor.
They're now calling him Doctor. The construction and repair work is just about complete, and the library appreciates everybody's patience in sitting through this, but it's just about over. And the fall book sale starts Thursday, October 17th from 2 to 9, Friday the 18th from 10 to 5, and Saturday the 19th from 10 to 4. There were books for gift books, books for a variety of offerings for kids and adults, plus I was assured that some of the offerings would be quirky. I do not know what that means, but I encourage you all to go to the sale and see what that might entail. Irvington Village Court charges from 9/1 to 10/7 this year. A total of 125 charges received, 98 disposed, and the total money collected and remitted to the state comptroller was $18,663.40. And that's it for me.
Excellent. Administrator's report.
Nothing tonight.
Village Clerk Treasurer's report.
Let me see. We are just about finished with our audit. Finished they call the MD&A, it's the management discussion and analysis part. So I'm waiting for the final draft back from our auditors. And we're starting to get ready to do our major bond issue in November. It'll be in excess of 10 million. So we'll be converting all of those bans we had for the past 5 years to a permanent financing. And rates are pretty good right now.
Oh, good.
Will they be in November?
Roll the dice.
Village Attorney's report.
No report.
Public comment, saved by the bell. Review of action items.
I have to respond to Leola's questions about the hotel, and I'm going to take a look at the LED bulb disposal to see if there's an answer.
And also, can we get the letter that was read to us? Can we get?
This letter. That one.
The environmental letter. It just seems like he's
on the next agenda. I mean, yeah, we'll reread it at the next meeting. It'll be on there.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn to executive session regarding volunteer personnel. If I can get a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.